Good morning to everyone, and thank you for your patience. Welcome to day 2 of the Corps' 401A2 hearing for proposed discharges associated with the Enbridge Line 5 Wisconsin Relocation Project. Just a quick note for those we have with us this morning, we will be posting all video and all visual materials prepared on our Line 5 webpage. At this time, I'll turn it over to our presiding officer for this event, Commander Josh Rudd.
Good morning, everybody. To those in the room and both online, thank you for being patient with us as we work through our technical difficulties. Once again, I am the acting commander of the St. Paul District of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. I will be presiding officer conducting day 2 of this public hearing. I am joined by members of the Corps Regulatory Division and welcome you to day 2 of the Section 401A2 of the Clean Water Act public hearing for the proposed Enbridge Line 5 Wisconsin segment relocation project. Verbal statements as to whether discharges from the proposed project would or would not violate the Bad River Band's water quality requirements, and if conditions are available and necessary to ensure compliance. Today we will close session 1 of the hearing after closing statements from the Bad River Band. And the session 2 of today's hearing will begin at 1 p.m. It will be allotted for the public to share verbal statements. Please note the ground rules, the agenda of this hearing, which will be posted periodically throughout today's hearing. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to the Bad River Band for the first portion of their closing remarks. Thank you.
Good morning, Colonel Rudd and representatives from the Corps of Engineers. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak this morning. My name is Ian Payton with Whitewater Engineers. I'll be addressing rebuttal comments on behalf of the Bad River Band this morning. And also like to acknowledge the IT staff for working through the technical issues. I appreciate their efforts. So the first slide I'd like to present just briefly to set the context for our rebuttal comments. And the fundamental purpose of the hearing is, of course, to address the question, will construction of the Line 5 reroute project likely cause a violation of the Bad River Band's water quality standards? And an appropriate follow-up question related to the overall question is, will a water quality standard, either numeric or narrative, be violated at any of the locations where a water course crosses into the Bad River Reservation? And we looked at this figure yesterday, a figure of all the watersheds surrounding the reservation and the proposed reroute shown in red. And to address that appropriate follow-up question, you really need to look at all those different water courses that enter the reservation. And zooming in on that, that includes all the smaller water courses. So you've got to look at them all as they surround the reservation individually. The first topic I'd like to address, the rebuttal comments, is the comment suggests the percent disturbance of the entire Bad River watershed caused by the Line 5 reroute project means there will be no hydrologic effects from the project. And the text below is an unofficial transcript statement, but as stated yesterday was by Enbridge, their representative, there's about 270,000 acres in the larger Bad River watershed. Of that, 144,000 acres are upstream of the reservation. Of that 144,000 acres, 118.4 acres of forest land will be converted to grassland. And just doing the simple math, they showed what that amounts to is 0.04% of the total watershed of the 270,000 acres is going to be impacted. And then they go on to state, if you just looked at those portions of the watershed that are upstream of the reservation, that's 0.08% of the portion of the watershed that would be affected. So a rebuttal comment is, Simply calculating the percent disturbance of the overall Bad River watershed does not address the local hydrologic changes occurring in individual watercourses that cross into the Bad River Reservation. You can look at things in aggregate, but that doesn't address the specific potential violations of the band's water quality standards unless you look at the individual watercourses. The second topic is Enbridge's comment regarding Manning's N coefficient implies the increases in runoff rates are similarly low across all drainages. And again, I'll read through the unofficial transcript statement. We express runoff in many ways, but one of the most common ways is looking at Manning's N, which is used to develop runoff coefficients. A higher Manning's roughness coefficient indicates more resistance to overland flow. So a forest deciduous runoff, or forest deciduous forest, I think that's not maybe a typo there, would typically have a Manning's N of 1.5, whereas a grassland would be about half that, 0.8. What that means is that the runoff coefficient will be reduced by about 50%. Highlighted in yellow, the key point is what that will result in is a runoff rate. If you were to look at that for the aggregate of the project, an increase in runoff overall is 0.02 to 0.04% I think increase in runoff of 0.2 to 0.02 to 0.04% into the streams that feed the reservation. So the rebuttal comment is this application of Manning's N, and you typically think of Manning's N in open channel flow equations, but presumably equation application does not address increased runoff rates for individual streams. Again, that's looking at an aggregate, not looking at the individual streams that need to be evaluated to assess compliance with the band's water quality standards. The statement does, however, as you can see highlighted in yellow at the bottom, acknowledge an aggregate increase in runoff, albeit relatively small, which is in violation of the band standards. Topic 3. Enbridge comments regarding HDD inadvertent release analyses of the White River and Bear Trap Creek, in addition to the Bad River. And we didn't have the specific transcript text, but it was discussed yesterday about the focus of the sediment. Well, it was discussed yesterday about HDD IR analyses for the White River and Bear Trap Creek. We knew that Bad River had been addressed by an HDD IR release, but we had not seen the White River and Bear Trap Creek analyses. So our rebuttal comment is the focus of the sediment discharge monitoring report, which is Appendix 7 to the Corps' environmental assessment for this Line 5 relocation project, was limited to HDD IRs from the Bad River only. Analyses of HDD releases in the White River Bear Trap Creek were not provided in Appendix 7. Appendix 7 did not assess HDD IRs in smaller water courses with a lower relative ambient TSS concentration located near the reservation boundary. As we discussed yesterday, assessment of those water courses with lower relative, smaller watersheds and closer to the reservation boundary are more likely to demonstrate exceedances of the band standards. Then topic 4, Enbridge comments regarding wetland impacts. Again, the unofficial transcript statement was it's a 41-mile reroute of the Line 5 pipeline. The projected impacts to include are 101 acres of temporary impacts to 534 wetlands, 0.2 acres of temporary impacts to water bodies, including 72 jurisdictional crossings, and 0.02 acres of permanent impacts to wetlands. Now, a rebuttal comment is, given the acknowledged 101 acres of projected impacts to 534 wetlands, the 0.02 acres, which is less than 900 square feet of permanent impacts to wetlands, is unreasonably low. Simply replacing fill back into a wetland, even if it's been segregated and carefully managed and replaced in the topsoil, does not replace a wetland. The density, chemistry, topography of the replaced wetlands will not be the same as the original wetlands. This changes the quality of the wetlands as they're replaced or attempt to be restored. I believe that's my last comment. Another representative from the band will be addressing the rebuttal comments. Thank you.
I'm John Bratton from Limnotech, representing the band, swapping in as we shift topics from surface water impacts to geological and groundwater related comments. So the first topic here, first of three, is Enbridge comments regarding trenching, advancing and removing sheet piles and blasting and associated groundwater impacts. So unofficial transfer statements or paraphrases of statements include that blasting is not going to change the groundwater conditions. There are no areas with high potential for artesian conditions. Impacts of blasting are really zero, and the flow rates, timing, temperature, and contaminants will not increase in reservation surface waters as a result of these construction activities. Rebuttal comments: given that more than 6 miles of blasting, 6 linear miles of blasting, and extensive changes to shallow bedrock, permeability, and fracture density, as well as high subsurface flow potential along trenches that are partially backfilled with rock from blasting, the characterization of minimal impacts to groundwater is unrealistic. Secondly, the installation of trench breakers within trenches is unlikely to mitigate enhanced subsurface flow due to short circuiting of flow around the barriers due to bedrock alteration by blasting and other construction methods such as sheet piling that would create permanent alteration of the subsurface geology. And finally, there are multiple areas where artesian conditions have been identified along the project corridor. So associated statements about the low likelihood of encountering these are inaccurate. Topic 6, Enbridge comments regarding bedrock geology. Bedrock in the project area is sandstone. Radionuclides, arsenic, and sulfate or sulfide minerals are not present in bedrock along the project corridor. Rebuttal comments: the crystalline bedrock in the upland areas of the project corridor, rather than sandstone, will be impacted by extensive blasting. It is known to contain metals and other harmful minerals that would be mobilized by construction disturbance based on that mineralization. The mineralization is such that it has led to a proposed mine in the headwater areas, although not explicitly along the pipeline corridor. The sedimentary bedrock formation located under the clay plain areas of the project area, the lower lying areas, is known to contain radionuclides, in contrast to the statements. And the bedrock geology and mineralogy along the pipeline corridor have not been generally well characterized. So statements about the mineralogy, definitive statements, are not based on actual data. And finally, Enbridge comments regarding wetlands, filled trench, and sheet pile interaction with groundwater and surface water. Transcript or paraphrase statements: there are 26 blasting sites near water. These are perennial. There will be very little use of sheet piling, unlike for line 3. And line 3, to remind you if you weren't present yesterday, is where multiple artesian breaching events occurred, including one major one in Minnesota. Third comment: the pipeline can't act as a dam if buried properly. And then the final, trench backfill could become a conduit for enhanced groundwater flow, but this will be prevented by trench breakers. Similar comment was noted earlier. So in response, permanent draining of perched wetlands in upland bedrock areas and redirection of subsurface flow is likely due to the inability of trench breakers to create barriers that are 100% effective due to fracturing beyond the blasted trench. So in addition to moving water from one wetland to another, the net result is likely to be increased flow to tributaries downstream that enter the reservation, and then transport of associated materials with the flow, dissolved constituents and otherwise. Second rebuttal comment, extensive areas of artesian conditions have been identified along the reroute that will likely result in breaching, as mentioned previously. And then finally, mitigation plans associated with breaching and additional subsurface issues are not clearly identified. The primary mitigation measures are only associated with regrading and recontouring of surface issues. That concludes rebuttal comments.
Greetings, friends and relatives. My name is Dylan Jennings. This is Martin Paulus. We are Bad River tribal members. Much of today's testimony will focus heavily on the community of Bad River and our historical and cultural connections to place. For many Anishinaabe communities, culture is carried through kinship, geography, language, lifeways, habits, and expressions. It's important to understand that Anishinaabe Ijatuawan, or our way of life, requires in-depth environmental knowledge. Our tribal languages are often inextricably tied to culture and environment. Oftentimes, our language is so descriptive, specific, and accurate, the English language doesn't do it justice. Sometimes concepts do not exist in the Ojibwe worldview, making it difficult to translate directly. There will be a translation and transcription provided to the Army Corps in a timely fashion for this testimony. And when we talk about our lives as Anishinaabe, the only way to tell our truths is to do so in our own language. I'll also note that there was a point in time when people traveling through or inhabiting our ancestral homelands could understand our languages and even communicate with us. Language is the nexus for better understanding each other and our oftentimes differing worldviews.
Apoio. Ninsa wabajeshi indígena casa, mas que zibem do Njaba, cae macua o do Demian. Acho que ninguém para o grande maguda pe aqui que doi anda o wind mage na ani na que o de PT da água que o bamarizean o daqui mal mani do massa, mas que zibem me mendiga sa esconige nem em dayang não bom, mas que zibem na Shnabe we Nagae minoa Niwi tajidar gape onde que ainda ga Anishinaabe da análise da ma. Esqueça nos gego que ainda água que mas que zibem ga anake que não mage ga anake que não mage em bina shwa nino en bebajagi ango massa nungum mas que zibem. Tibisco o esqueça o ao jibo Anishinaabe eu jaco e taba na wede nagabi nunga kea we de besho jiwa tagani zagaigening mi samaga taban na mabina shmagi tiwin da magus da janet in de jingen nege o manumen mi sa yoga jichige da na Shnabe ki pejad ki presidnaga kenege go gane jiwin da moment da janet yu manumen ogi pimena ane kenege the old tangi manumen. Mima muding gune kaning ga old tanga on the Shnabe, mina we de get the ganing ga pe become a yard. Neskeda show Bisaga Asia Windamoad and then Nana Kupajiganug get the ganing in the jinging you manumen nungum das kakagan is you in jiga de nungum get the ganing guy mi ke ga pe onje yawa de ma mash kazibing you in the kubijiga nang nagai ni no nungum bisa ginwege gi bitamo da ma ke ma mash kazibing you mash kazibing in the shnabing miga ginwege ki pe jagi wa da nage kentam mo agoin akina gego ya ga kina masa nishke o naga ke ya tape ge kendam ge ne jawa da ke ken da me kama wa da abajitu wajin da me no arze da nishnabe ani ne ke ge ne ja da monam da manashkiki da ani ne ke da nan da abajige da nishnabe nan da nan kubijiga nan nuj gego gi wabanda guz gi pepe jagi nuj gego gi wabanda go gi wabanda good in you be managing the gin the bishko oasian you be me kojwe in the gin you be me say in the gin you be mood in the gin guy nuja money do sangai you aya anama ma again the way in the gin ma king you oasiak gigekno mo awag dash ani de wataji mekagade giyo mushkiki ani ne kaya namje chiga de genyo ono mushkiki ne gigekno magozi wag wego de no mushkiki ge namje chida ge namje chiga de gen we oje to dio mushkiki wa menokago wagwin ogi douglas dunawan and you nuj mushkikin bakana be bakana mushkikin da oje tuad wa we do kago da meno yawa da binjai isaka paiji ga kendango nishnabe gi kana wabaman and you asian gi baba nanda wenjigate gi baba mije nuj gegu gegeta in the moment akina jichige wa dengi umani do bin shima gyo awisia gama gyo be madizi cheke gai nungum dash niwi tajendan eje way bak zigwang eskesa we ani ningo za da ogun ECOP eski gemizi gang da in the coming kama mashkazibi eske nuj gego gigekno magoya meja we present the window ingio aduzo kanak UOP we eskiga mizigayang eskedash isa garbage too young the we wenige kendamang wa wani jichigayang mamoshka zibing agaye eske shash eskeda sho gigekno magozi men wani jichigayang da yamang you denwa mashkiki wabo ejiche zagiji wanga ma ene natagung jio tubako do abo ejina kadeyo bisa na bujituyang da yamang you jiwaka mizigan na seigan bagiwa gai nujgegu nujigo mashkiki wa odet tumanga ma metagong Nagaish MCUP we ningazo dao mekom agai da ami wa da yo anuj ki goyag isama iwe nungum dash neso tama neso tan MCU we epit the gamaseg MCUP we ami wa da gi goyag gi na koje wewa da ma agada jiwan da ami wa da ma ZB san wa indaji bakoi baketa goyag inu ZB san misama indaji ami wa dan gigoyak mi wenje jayanga masa indaji ga kame jiwang bawatega ye ejina kade isama da bajabai gengama nishkeda shkaini bujina gengija wijiwa gao nishimi ban bima ima with the city ang da mino yang da jichige yang nujge guge in the ashange yang ga ila shamada mi jichige da onishnabe nujge gu jichige da nata mego da nugi the mego bajaba ga bagidna wa wanga ga jichige da onishnabe sa we ani nibing mi COP mo money we go said ishke gaye arzu kana ga the bajamo tagewa the UP we jichige yang mi COP ani we are bujing o they mean the giza COP at the money we go said da nishinabe nujke go na bujiga the we go as we hoje to the Odai Manao Nishinabe, the Bishkugo, we guasi Makakna Gae, we guasi Jiman, Ujgego, or Dujatun, or Dujatuna Nishinabe, we abuj studio, we guas. Eshke Gae, Bean, Virginia, Bejika Kiwenzi, Kamas Kwaba Kagme Jabat, Ipeg Kinomagate, Ani Nakea, Jima, we guasi Jiman the king, Egeta. Ingiwedig chayag in the moment get paid then the came among ani na kaya jichigayang the do tamang kina jichigay daw na shinabe mino agay the moenzong the in the kamaga KOP nu jade taken the natawaging and nu na masa UP we when is a kasagay the Jesus Gimashumasanan, Kegeta Nujagego in the Jingama King, Kino Yamang, Wamiji Yang, the Minokago Yang, Gegeta money do Wadun, money do Wadun and you aided taking them what they aim on, Minan, Escominug, or the Tagaminug. Pagisana Gagay Nuj Gego in the Jinging Masa Wabish Tuyan the Joina Maga the Joina Maguyang Masa Binja Nino and the Mino Iron Visaga Wabata and the Shabe the Jichigate Giga Jichigate the Neo Gajichigate the Giwa in the Magate and in the Kea and Abajichiga they can anyway the taking the Magai Minaga gay, Nivita Shindani, you Peter Guaging, Nishkeda Shiani, the Guagin, we COP, Manum in the Keda, Nishinabe, Miga up and the Nishinabe, the Mekang you, Manumin, you Dinawa, Bijum made in the Jinging Aman, the Bikang, we Magi, they get the Ganning, Jayang, the Dominicayang, get the I get the money to water the guy Manumin unji in the Kagoyan being in the Kagoyan means not the Minoya young. Get the new go give up and the goosey young, the average too young, the Minoa is young. A guy SUP we were boom, he was saying that in the coming up. Meanwhile, UOP is the Nebing, our Nishnabia. Wabanda Guzid, Wabanda and Kayage Chigate, HK we needing our magical money doings. We see UP, we Wabajakazo, the Wawa they say, ECU became among UP, we Gashkatuyang, the new J in the Wawashkishi. They get Visa Kaya Asia Chigayang, Kanawabum. Kana Wabaminuangi, we say Chigewat, get the pain the moment, Chigewat, the Neka came the Mang, a Kinegegu. Mino Gae, you Isama, Asia Chigay, Misery, Ma Ishkonigan, or Mashkazibing, Nuja, Wasian, when the injig. You Mekwa, Nikugu, Guajashkwa, Guawazu, Nuja, Wenisiak, Migi Wewa, Obamati was in it, Obamati when the one, the one the new Nishnabin, get the Pete and Aguzio, Wagingio, Wasiak, Chigewat, the Bemadizian, Agaye, the Gigo, kai gui king ga UP nishke sa we abata o mekom we COP we bune ge da nishnabe the way we ben abi the nisabi the begin again naga the sadio sabina ma nam mit coming ge the zi bashko ge da nishnabe the inigash ke da mi da wisnet naga the shanged or the shamado the way magana gai isiu ikadoy na masa yu in the kamagat the evening the boom the gogging zigwang agaye the shendaman we money do king the kamagak say nishkedash me jako gawin the gibag the nasi nishnabe the money do which gate and nishnabe which gate ogi ogi win the gigi win the moagish minijich gate the kanabach the moment oder manuji no nishnabe visa magi zegze da jiget gigajiget yo dashka jiget da nishnabe gimuj gi pe bajage da mani do jiget gija den goji wani nu dago zisek gini gashkatu da jiget ga min gozi young nishnabe we agaye the Nujgegu ga min gozi young the mani do jiget the bishku go mede wing a boyzong we abach to do modo san we know nagos da how many do the way gan which go ga looks the nishnabe the shit in the kanuna and any money to me any jige yang in the mukin the ga de ga min gozi young get the nujgegu and then the abach to men the money do which young we buy young nishke nuja asani kanige go abach to young and da on and the wabanda and the king busy way shkoni ganding which just the mekamanga kanige go abach to young in the gashka to young the we ganun and and give money to get the kind money do a kind money do other ga chiga de ga money do marking minoash we gonna but you in the kiji gagi to yanungum koidash the shendaman onji jiwan you in the be mi sama benesi what doing mi sama onji jiwan the masa mi sama ke ada jiwan ga binish masa gai ogiga kain da na wanda shin da na kubijigan the jiwang the jabo jiwang you nebe and the nama kamek isama the beme jiwang kina ma king kin in the biwang misa ke batai na doing in the mashiki na masa misa ke na abitu yang kina gegu ga chigade go making na gegu isia gewi no pa abich to what kina gegu ga chigade na marking get you're gonna do in the gashkatuya and the gagita and ungum and the pagish dash the genwajmo moyan in the gashkatusi in the genwajmo and ungum you're gonna do what doyan
Oh, ishke go dash and then way magani dog jimaganash guy when it dash money insa bija kins and dish in the cause wabashashi and do that mashkazibing and dunjaba we got you in the mechanical gino agape jayago mas on ungum when it dash mashke wasanago shke with the kea wenjia mashkazibing asian akandig miyama the nokumis apane get kidod apane the McQuenamin the bikong nago guy kina away siag nago guy kina naga bainajin guy kina when it dashma shke mia obey kiwenzi abon apane ge kiddo guy Mio Anishinaabe Ejitwawan, Gishpin Ani Bimea Duyang Ma Minoa Giga Mashkawism in Ma Nago Gae Any Dashma and Miquenaman Kina Kinaga Ka Minagu Izid Anishinaabe New Jaganashi Bangi. I mentioned my name is Bija Keens or Dylan Jennings, and this is Wabashashi, and I'm not going to translate what he said. We're going to provide that at a later time here. I will say though, we're lifelong learners of our language and our way of life, and tribal harvesters as well. Our Ojibwe language is extremely descriptive and colorful. As you've already heard, the way we talk about our home is called Mashkazibing. The word breaks down into Mashkig and Zibing. Mashkig referring to a wetland, and it's synonymous with the word Mashkiki, which refers to medicine. There is no irony in the fact that many of our wetlands nurture biodiversity and incubate many forms of plant animal life, which maintain an intricate and balanced ecological thread. Zibing refers to a river or moving body of water. If roughly translated, Mashkazibing is the medicine river, or quite literally the place where medicines grow. Europeans couldn't properly pronounce Mashkazibing and interpret it as Mudjizibing, which would roughly translate as bad river. Environmental practices to many Ojibwe communities stem from a shared relationship and an understanding of reciprocity. Additionally, it's understood by Ojibwe communities that man was in fact the last order of creation lowered upon the earth. All other orders of creation had settled on Aki or earth well before human beings settled in these places. We understand that human beings are therefore dependent upon everything that has preceded us. A common word utilized to describe Western equivalencies of natural resources would be what we call Wenji Bimataziang. Wenji Bimataziang literally refers to from where we get life. The stark contrast in words and perspectives set the foundation for how tribal nations like ours exert and exercise sovereignty. In Western perspectives, natural resources are often seen through the lens of commodification or recreation. These prevailing perspectives of environment have been extremely damaging, not only to the environment, but to the tribal communities like Mashkazibing that depend upon healthy ecosystems for our well-being. Indigenous philosophies center around a multi-generational lens and intergenerational relationships. These philosophies take into consideration generations that have left the earth, our ancestors in the past, and also strong consideration for generations of unborn community to come. At the root of traditional knowledge lies the interrelated connections that exist between human and non-human beings across Turtle Island. Current environmental management practices will never achieve balance without considerations of its interrelated complex, which is the foundation of Indigenous knowledge. I also wanted to note that our land status is also very unique, which I'm sure you all know, and it creates a land use dynamic unseen in our area. Our community owns a large portion of our lands in common and has intentionally kept a vast majority undeveloped. Furthermore, subsistence harvesting is both permitted and encouraged on our reservation and throughout our ceded territories, as it provides nourishment to our families and it provides a nexus for cultural revitalization. You will not find another community so dependent upon subsistence harvesting and dependent upon the health of our environment. Simply put, our community maintains a relationship with the entire ecosystem and not a segmented area. We continue to utilize an entire system approach, which naturally extends beyond our reservation boundaries, as ecosystems do not recognize the lines that colonization has drawn. In the southeast portion of the reservation, Gawandog Zagakwa Zibing, or the Potato River area, provided the necessary sustenance for a growing little family in Mashkazibing. Wild game, wild plants, sugar bush, seasonal berries, and artesian springs and other harvesting opportunities kept the Madej family physically and spiritually nurtured for decades. My great-grandfather, Raymond Madej, had a strong connection to this place as well as other places on our reservation. He would teach his children and his grandchildren to hunt, harvest, and navigate this area. Generations later, his great and great-great-grandchildren continue to have a relationship with this area. This is true for many of our families on our reservation. Historical ties to place are intrinsic and inherent. As you'll hear today, every family in this room and every family in our Bad River Reservation has their harvesting locations. These are places of power. We respect each other's places and the teachings and stories left behind for how to care for these places. Multiple unmarked artesian springs reservation, which are dependent upon healthy aquifers and stable groundwater. As the United States grapples with water issues, Bad River maintains multiple sources of safe water that the community absolutely depends upon. The Great Lakes Indian Fish and Wildlife Commission, GLFWC, developed a vulnerability index that considers available data from entities like NOAA, other fisheries and plant and wildlife data. And these vulnerability indexes cite specific species or beings like trout that are moderately to extremely vulnerable based on this index, considering factors such as natural and anthropogenic barriers, thermal niche, hydrological niche, disturbance regime, competition, and even loss of genetic variation. Species like ogawag or walleye are rated as moderately to extremely vulnerable as well within the ceded territories of Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Michigan. External climate factors, including increased drought, more intense flooding, and loss of cool water habitat, all contribute immensely towards walleye decline. Additionally, modeled change in range and population size by the year 2050 have demonstrated predicted decrease by 65% in Wisconsin alone. This doesn't encapsulate the issues with mercury and PFAS contamination in fish populations that our communities are already currently grappling with in the ceded territory. Species such as manumin were ranked as most vulnerable, being species, and the report cites that sensitivity in a multitude of factors that contribute to manumin and loss, including natural barriers, human land use changes, limited dispersal, thermal and hydrological niche, disturbance, dependence on snow and ice, uncommon landscape features, sensitivity to pathogens and predators, competition, and genetic variation. These existing circumstances alone warrant concern. Any impacts to water flow, water quality, aquifers, or overall environmental health, both on reservation and outside of the exterior boundaries, could have catastrophic impacts on the very being species that Bad River and Anishinaabe depend upon. We're not looking for sympathy here today. Our people are strong and resilient. We are tired of continually fighting the exact same fight every single generation here faces. The faces across the table are different, but the agencies and companies are always the same, continually bombarding our community with policies and practices that put our life way at detriment. Historical traumas experienced from previous generations are continually handed down to each new generation. The historical disruption of environment, wetlands, and waterways, and any subsequent form of environmental degradation continues to disrupt our collective community health, and it negatively impacts our ability to strive towards achievement of Minobe Mataziwan. Minobe Mataziwan refers to living a good life, and it refers to both the spiritual, the physical, and the emotional components of that. As my noko, my grandmother, always told us, every community defines what health means to them. She said to us, living a good life means we have access to clean water, that we have the ability to continue the cultural and spiritual relationships our ancestors laid down for us. My noko would say, wealth for us is not measured in our pantries, it's the fish and deer meat in our freezers, it's the connection we have to our home. Mi omanik and wewe tuyan migwich bizindawiye. Thank you for listening.
It doesn't matter, John. Watch out. Bonjour. Ogi Mabanisi Queen and Josh Nakas, Nigazine and Dodum, Mishkizi Bean and Dunjaba. My English name is Sandra Derrigan. I'm of the Eagle Clan and I'm from Bad River. I'm a tribal elder. Our reservation contains vital wetlands which act as natural water filters and habitats. These ecosystems will be affected by water levels and by introducing foreign materials and fluids into these wetlands. For as long as my people have lived here, we have depended upon our waterways within what is now known as our reservation boundaries. Our traditions, ceremonies, and oral histories affirm our connection to the land and water. We affirm our pre-colonial migration story. The food that grows on water is the reason we're here. Manuman, wild rice, is an ecologically sensitive crop. Water levels and disturbances in the waterbed and sediments will affect the wild rice. The soil along the river is rich in nutrients. Plants are gathered for food, medicine, and craft works. My family has picked cranberries, juneberries, strawberries, raspberries, cherries, choke cherries, plums, and apples. We also pick leeks, asparagus, squash, and pumpkins. My late husband planted gardens along the river. I recently found out that there's still others that continue to do so and catch the squash and pumpkin that float down to Bad River or to Bad Bear Trap in the fall from the gardens that were planted along the river. The medicines are plentiful. Mishkizi B is Medicine River. I brought a small collection today from some of the medicines I have at home, just to show you. You know, everybody says medicine, we get our medicine from here. This is just a small amount that I've collected in our area. I have a small, this is just a small sampling. These were all gathered in or near our wetlands. There's juniper, berries and needles, sweet flagroot, wheat K, Labrador, curly everlasting or grandmother sage, napkin, wild ginger, rosehip, rabbit root, gold thread, mullein, burdock, red willow, osha root, bear root, sweet fern, lilies and lily pads, and chaga. And I'll send you more information on some of these plants at a later time. We also use various trees for medicinal purposes: cedar, balsam, maple, and birch. We also use use materials for our crafts. Primarily for my family, it's been basketry. I've made birch bark and sweetgrass baskets and containers. Besides the bark, I gather the weegoo and tree gum. Both my late husband and I sold baskets and birch bark items to supplement our income from time to time. Water is our connection to the spirit world. It is here where we can make our offerings and feed the spirits. Ceremonies take place in and around the water. The 1854 treaty guarantees a permanent homeland without threat of forced removal. The lands we occupied were reduced by more than 98% according to the terms of the treaty. As our land base dwindled, families could no longer count on traditional hunting, fishing, and gathering ways to feed themselves. To stave off the starvation, many became dependent on government rations. Our natural resources are limited. This is our homeland. We have no second home. Our 1854 treaty was signed 171 years ago. Many of our treaty rights have been ignored and withheld. It wasn't until the 70s that our people were allowed to fish in Lake Superior, even within our boundaries. The Gurno decision affirmed that treaty right. In the 80s, our treaty right to hunt, fish, and gather on ceded territories was reaffirmed by the Voigt decision. In 2022, our treaty right for a permanent homeland without threat of forced removal was reaffirmed in the regard to the exemption of state property tax. Since the signing of the treaty, our people have fought to have our rights upheld. This fight is not only about defending what we have, It's about reclaiming what's been taken. This is a battle for our land, culture, lifeways, and sovereignty. Without these things, we will cease to exist as the people we are. To allow this project is to commit genocide. Thank you for listening.
Gnu, Anin, Lieutenant Colonel Rudd and Associates. Gnu, Nagoni Gnu Inini, Indigenous Kaz, Magizi, Nindudem, Mashkazibi, and Dunjaba. My script name is Lead Golden Eagle Man. My English name is Joe Bates. I'm Eagle Clan. I live and work on the Bad River Reservation. I'm a hunter, fisher rights activist, and a water protector. We come from very strong people that have survived the continued efforts to exterminate us as a people. For centuries, we have coexisted with Mashkazibi. And you might ask, coexist, how do we do that? Well, we have always lived with the river and the water, surrounding water since our arrival in our Great Migration story. We learned how the river and surrounding waters provided food and other essentials for our survival. I have been fortunate to hunt big and small game on our reservation. I first learned from my uncles on the best places to hunt deer on the reservation, where we utilize all parts of our reservation for hunting and gathering. We know where they move and feed, depending upon the seasons. As our ancestors did, we moved with them. We know that Potato River Road offers excellent remote hunting. Potato River crosses both the north and south tributaries of On Creek. We have fields of clover for grazing deer on the south border of the reservation along the banks of the Marengo River, which feeds directly into the Bad. Okay. Oh, I don't have a touch screen, which I wish I did. Please bear with me. I'll get there. During the spring spawning run, we harvest fish from both the Bad River and Kakagan sloughs. We use this during the rest of the seasons. We provide fish for community events such as weddings, graduations, funerals, aunties, uncles, other community members that can't harvest for themselves. Once the waters become impaired through unnatural means, this annual harvest would cease. I've taught my children how to respectfully harvest balsam, mosses. We go down to the graveyard area to harvest mosses. We also have to scout various areas on a reservation to find balsam growths, which a lot of times they grow around the water. Also cedar, we harvest cedar, and pine boughs, white pine boughs. And we have numerous areas that, like I mentioned, we have to scout for these areas. And we always want to alternate our harvest areas so that we have that regrowth for future generations. We hunt small game on Stones Road. Stones Road crosses many small drainage areas, all feeding into the Bad River, White River, and ultimately emptying into Lake Superior. Another very important time of the year for us is Manuman, wild rice harvesting. We celebrate the annual harvest of wild rice during the third weekend of August. My children, it is open to the public. Let's see, I'm sorry. I keep losing my place here. We continue to harvest as our ancestors did before us, by canoe, push pole, and a good set of knockers. Those are rice sticks. Our harvest is directly dependent on water quality. We've had years we've had to suspend our harvest due to fluctuating water quality. All water and everything in it above us flows through the heartland of our community. In summary, everything we do is vital upon good, clean water. Our hunting, fishing, harvesting, and gathering is what we do as a people. I ask you, please do not allow actions in the watershed above us that would allow the waters to become more impaired. To us, water is life. Chimigwich.
For those participating online, we're going to take a 10-minute break. So we're going to, it's 11:08 right now. We'll resume again at 11:18. Thank you. Welcome back. We're going to continue our day 2 hearings with further rebuttal testimony from advocates.
Okay. Tuju, Junior Washington Cause, Mushkazibing and Dunjaba, in English, my name is Ben Connor Sr. From Bad River, and I'm of the Otter clan. Just take a minute and explain, like everybody that came before me, and me included, right? We introduce ourselves, we tell you our clan, we tell you where we're from. It's important to understand it because that's part of what makes us who we are, right? Our clan is part of what makes us who we are. Our home is a big part of what makes us who we are and why we're here, right? This is why we show up in force to fight for this, right? To do it right. I'm going to talk about treaty rates for a little bit, and the way it was explained to me. And I was always taught since I was a guy that our treaty rights were fought, right? For me in particular, that my ancestors fought for me, they'd never meet me. And as a member, it is now my responsibility to continue that. It's not a want. It's my responsibility now, and it's the next generation's responsibility also. Treaty rights are important. Our ancestors fought for those to be here for us for as long as the sun shines, the water flows, and the grass grows. That's forever, right? Like I said before, that was for generations. They knew they would never meet, and that's something that I feel very, very near and dear in my heart. I don't want to be the last person practicing these and observing these traditions, right? And all of these are tied intimately to our home, to Bad River, right? So we're people who have, I'm not even reading it. We're people who've survived in, genocide, displacement, assimilation, oppression, and it's an intergenerational trauma thing that we've all inherited, and we're all feeling today.
Excuse me, everybody. Give us a moment. We're having a technical issue. We're getting everything back up right now. Once again, we're having a technical issue. Everything is being sorted right now. Please stay with us for a moment. We'll have everything back up shortly.